there comes a point where where self improvement stops being about fixing yourself and start being about understanding yourself. Not more habits, not more discipline, but clarity. Clarity about how your energy works, how you make decision, and why forcing yourself into someone else's blueprint never lasts. That is the doorway of human design opens. And that is where today's conversation begins. Welcome to Mind Over Matter, the show where we explore inner strength, self mastery, and the mental frameworks that help us live with intention rather than pressure. I'm your host, Shreya, and today I'm joined by Scarlett Seebach, a human design reader, Reiki master, and certified crystal healer who is known for her no fluff, deeply practical approach to energy and personal authority. In this episode, we're exploring human design not as a label or personality test, but as a tool for clarity, confidence, and aligned decision making. If you have ever felt like you were trying to live life on hard mode, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Scarlett. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you so much, Shreya. It's great to be here.
And Scarlett, before we dive into the system itself, what was happening in your own life when human design first stopped being interesting information and started feeling like something you could actually live by?
Ooh, for me, the moment when human design became real was actually when I was looking at my gait expressions and I looked up my mother's chart. So, my conscious sun gate in human design, which is a little bit like your sun sign in astrology, not an exact equivalency, but close enough, is gate 7, which is very much about being the power behind the throne. It's about being a supporting character for someone else who is on stage. And I had been doing this my entire life in varying forms for my mother. And the other half of that channel, which we can get into that later if we want to, but it's basically the connector is gate 31, which is all about being in this place of authority and being on that stage and being the authority figure. And it's supported by that gate 7. So I was looking up family charts and I decided that if my mother didn't have gate 31, this was all complete and total nonsense. And not only did she have gate 31, that authority gate that connects right up to my gate 7, it was in a really prominent place. It was like her moon sign or something. I don't remember the exact one anymore, but that was a beautiful little moment of proof for me.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And you are also talking about the other channel. Can you just explain us about that?
So in human design is a somewhat complicated system. But in really simple terms, when two gates, which are a little bit like signs but not exactly, when two gates connect to each other inside a human design inside a human design chart, that is called a channel. And that's actually what can basically defines the centers that are also connected to those gates. It's how your definition in human design is determined. And if you'd like more of an explanation on that, I have a whole booklet that you can email me for that goes over that in excruciating detail. But, but that is the basics of how that works. Two gates meet, they make a channel, and that defines your centers that are surrounding that channel.
Yeah, thank you for explaining this. I think this is really amazing. And also, a lot of people hear about human design and assume it puts them in a box or limits what they can become. From your experience, what do people most misunderstand about what human design actually meant to do?
So I find that any person can treat any system as something that either limits them or expands them, and human design is no different. The thing that I see people do most often is they confuse their body mechanics, that is what human design really talks about, with their personality. They assume that those 2 are the same thing, and human design doesn't actually tell you anything about your personality. It really tells you more about how your body functions optimally. So that's the biggest
Yeah.
misconception is yeah.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing is that this is not about restrictions at all. It's about removing the pressure to be everything at once, and instead of like giving yourself permission to operate in a way that is already natural to you, and that feels like a very powerful reframe.
Yes, exactly. And it is, we do wanna be, so many things for so many people, and we usually fail at that quite spectacularly. And so it kinda helps reframe everything to the way that you're gonna function best,
Mm.
so that you can stop, while, pushing that Sisyphean boulder up a hill and figure out how to go around that hill.
Mhm. Yeah. And also, like, why do you think so many people feel disconnected from their own design in the first place? Like, what conditioning patterns tend to pull people away from how they are actually wired?
Well, that's a super interesting question because I think we are conditioned in so many different ways. And a lot of people grow up in families that have different designs than them. So naturally, your parents, your siblings, or whomever, they will condition you to act in a way that is not actually Ugh, what you're designed to act like.
Mm,
Actually, my brother is a truly phenomenal example of this. I am a manifester and I helped raise my brother. And my father is a manifesting generator, and my mother is a projector. And my brother is the only generator in the family. Manifestors, manifesting generators, and projectors are all kind of known for their general inconsistency. Like, I'm prone to job
mm,
hopping, so is my father. My mom moves in and out of the job market. So, this is a very normalized thing that we modeled for him. And
mm,
he, as a generator, is really best off doing something very, very consistently. But
mm,
because he was modeled for his entire life that it is perfectly normal to change your entire career path on a whim, he does that. And it always blows up in his face that he has this same urge to do that because he was brought up to
mm,
do that. And it's very much out of alignment for him. And it always leads to frustration for him. Every time he goes to try to switch his job to a whole other thing, he runs up against this giant wall of frustration, which is his out of alignment signal. And he has not yet learned that that means that he needs to take a step back and figure out what he actually needs to do in a consistent way. Um, so that's just a
mm.
fascinating little example, is that generators really are meant for this consistency, but it was not modeled to him, so he doesn't really know how to do it. If you look at manifestors, for example, and I am a manifester, we, just like projectors actually, and a little bit reflectors as well, are told to work, and that
Mm.
our value is derived from the amount of work that we can accomplish in a single day. And then you go to bed, you get up and you do it all over again, all day, every day. We work. And that is very much how our society is based. But for manifestors and projectors, we don't have that same consistent energy source that, two-thirds of the population has. So we burn ourselves out much faster on this work all day, every day model and find ourselves like needing to spend 3 days in bed far more often than our single counterparts because we're trying to keep up with someone who simply has more energy than we do. And, our value is not derived in the same place. For projectors, their value is very much derived from their insights and not so much the amount of work that they can accomplish in a day. And for manifestors, it's the new things that we bring to the table. So again, it's not necessarily the work that we accomplish in a day. So that's just a few examples of, us being conditioned to not be what we really are.
Yeah, I think that really highlights how early and subtle this conditioning starts. And I think it's not that people are broken, it's that they have been trained to override themselves for years, like sometimes for decades, maybe.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
And also, how does this misalignment usually show up in like day to day? What are some real life signs that someone is living against their design rather than with it?
Ooh, there's actually a target emotion for misalignment for each of the types, which is super handy. So there is this thing that you're kind of living with on a day to day basis, or even a moment to moment kind of basis once you get in to the experiment that lets you know that you are out of alignment. And for generators, that is frustration. I talked about my brother and the frustration he would feel every time he moved or tried to move into a different job. So for him, it's very much this feeling of frustration that really lets him know that he is moving out of alignment. For manifestors, it's anger. And for projectors, it is bitterness. And bitterness can be somewhat of a nebulous concept. So I really like the way that Shayna and Dana explain it on the podcast Day Luna. If you ever want to look more into human design, it's a great podcast to start with. They describe it as looking at somebody, what somebody else has or what somebody else is doing, and kind of having that little comparison game and then going, must be nice, very much in that kind of tone. So
Wow.
that's kind of that bitterness feeling, and it almost gets accompanying with this bad taste in your mouth. And then manifesting generators, they get a double whammy. They usually get both frustration and anger. So super fun for them, very explosive. And then the last one is reflectors. And there's not that many reflectors in the world. It's only about 1% of the population, but they do exist. And that out of alignment feeling is disappointment.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that connection between burnout, self doubt, and ignoring your own internal signals feels so important. Like it explains why willpower alone never seems to fix all the problems.
No, willpower is one of those things that like it's a muscle that you
Mm.
really have to work out on a regular basis, and just like with a muscle it needs nourishment. So,
Yeah. And also for someone who's listening and who feels seen by this, but also overwhelmed, where do you suggest they start? Like, what is the grounded way to begin working with human design without turning it into another thing to optimize?
so you can Google human design chart, and a million different websites will come up there that will run your human design chart for you and give you the basics of the information that you need. And the best place to start is really with your strategy and your authority. And, to give you like a basic overview of one's strategy and authority, I'll go over the most common ones. Um, when you're talking about generators or manifesting generators, the strategy is to wait to respond. And so, what that looks like is very much taking a step back, taking in your surroundings for a moment, seeing what draws your eye or your ear or whatever sense it is that is drawing you at the time, and then responding to that with your sacral center. And the sacral center actually makes a couple of noises that are super handy. It's a nice little cue to let you know that you're actually responding from your sacral and not your mind. So it goes, uh huh, uh, or And that's I mean, the is basically just in disguise. So, and whenever you look at something, listen to something, feel something, whatever else, just listen to your sacral cues, that or and go from there. That is by far the most common response, or the most common strategy. But you also have projectors, and their strategy is to wait for the invitation. And a lot of projectors get really confused about this whole waiting for the invitation thing. That does not mean hole up in your house and wait for somebody to ring your doorbell and invite you to go do something. That is not the thing. What waiting for the invitation really means is to dive deep into your fascinations, become an interesting person, and then go out into the world and shine that light and be the magnet for the people who want to give you those invitations, the people who recognize that light in you and then are drawn to you and then invite you because they saw you. That is what a real invitation looks like. Ed McMahon is not gonna come knock on your door and give you $1,000,000 and invite you out to supper. That's not a thing. But
Yeah.
real invitations when you go outside are a thing for projectors. This has literally never happened to me because 'cause I'm a manifester, and that's not how that works. But as a manifester, um our strategy is a little bit on the complicated side. A lot of manifestors say that our strategy is actually to initiate, and there is truth in that. But the official party line is that the strategy for a manifester is to inform. And this is true because manifestors have what's called a closed and repelling or dense kind of aura. So, the people around us don't really know what's going on with us. We're a lot harder to read than most of the other types. So, it makes other people feel more comfortable and they're less likely to basically get in the way if we just let them know what's going on with us and what we're about to do, what we're going to do. And this should not be confused with asking for permission. This is something very, very different. We are letting people know what we're going to do. We are not asking if we can. And then reflectors, it's a little bit different for these guys as well. They have basically a wide open chart, like the whole thing from top to bottom is completely undefined. So it's really good for people who are reflectors to take their time making decisions as much as humanly possible, and if possible, wait a full lunar cycle before making major decisions. So that's your basic strategy. That is the strategy part of strategy and authority. And there are lots of places where you can look this up more. I'm going to be coming out with classes on it soon. So you can also, sign up for a reading with me if you'd like, and I will definitely explain yours in detail. When you talk about your authority, that's the other half of this decision-making piece. And there's really only 3 main authorities. There are technically 8, but let's just stick with the 3. The first one is, your solar plexus, which is emotional authority. So, like, about half of the population actually has emotional authority, so it's kind of a coin flip as to whether or not you do. And these people have what's called an emotional wave. So, What an emotional wave is basically an emotional response to something that's happening internally. These emotions have absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in your external environment. So I kind of like to say you can be happy at a funeral and sad at a birthday party. It's just there's no connection to your external environment with this emotional wave. Now, you can obviously respond to your external environment with emotions as well, but that's separate from your emotional wave. With these people, it is very much best to take your time making decisions and attempt to ride that entire emotional wave and ask yourself on this wave multiple times, will this make me happy? Which I know sounds selfish, but this is a very internal process. Um, so that is in a very small nutshell how the emotional wave and how emotional authority works. And then you've got sacral authority, which is actually just exactly the same as the sacral response we went over earlier with generators and manifesting generators. So copy paste, it's exactly the same. And
Yeah.
then and then you got splenic authority, which is more like that a still small voice intuition. It speaks only once and then it's done. This is something projectors and manifestors have, but not generators. So, very brief. That is very, very quickly the main things that you do as far as strategy and authority goes. Look up your chart, find out which one you have, and if you don't have one of those, which you're gonna probably have one of those, you can always book a reading, and I or someone you like better can tell you all about it.
Definitely. And I think you just made everything very simple. And I really appreciate how simple and embodied that sounds. Thank you for explaining everything so effortlessly and so beautifully. And like for anyone who's listening and who feels tired of trying to become someone else, what would it look like to trust that who you are already or might actually be enough?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think that probably depends on who you are. Like, I imagine that that looks different for everybody because we are so different from each other. So,
Mm.
ultimately acting in authenticity, being comfortable in your own authenticity, that's going to be being you. And I don't think I can dictate what that looks like for you.
Yes. And I also think that, like, agree, like, human design is not about changing who you are, it's about remembering how you work best and giving yourself that permission to live from that truth.
Mhm.
And this
Absolutely.
is truly, yeah, this is truly an amazing conversation with you. And for my listeners who want to explore your work, like your design work, and want to learn more about it, where is the best place for them to find you?
So the best place to find me is on my website, and that is yourabundantdesign.com. And feel free to sign up for my newsletter. I do not spam you. I do not have the energy for that. And I'm actually going to be coming out with a couple of beginner friendly human design courses in the relatively near future. And you'll only find out about it if you sign up for my newsletter because I don't do social media. So,
Yes, and I will make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you. And for my listeners, thank you for joining us on Mind Over Matter. If this episode sparked reflection, let it settle. You do not need to act on everything at once. Awareness is itself is a movement. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and remember that inner alignment is a form of strength. And do not forget to hit the follow button, subscribe, and also feel free to share your thoughts because your ears deserve premium content. Thank you.